Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com. Joining us right now from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and the author of the Big Mac blog and also a regular contributor to DFWOT, the e-magazine for the Apple iPad. It's Mac Engel. Long enough intro?
Wow, I was impressed. Did you write that down, or was that off the top of your head?
No, I did not. And
that was
believe
pretty
me,
impressive, Bryan.
That'll be the last time it ever comes out even that smoothly.
That went well. Good job.
All right. How you doing?
I'm good. How was your weekend?
It was interesting.
Have you ever said to that question though, Bryan? Well, it's terrible. It was awful. I mean, it was total train wreck. Country music song bad.
Country music song bad is pretty awful. Let me just tell you, I did a high school football game in a place where they tint the windows on the press box, and it's a night game. Okay, all right.
Wait, were you doing the play-by-play of the game?
Yes.
Oh man.
And so
you couldn't see it.
You could not see the football. Okay, and this is not the first time I've done this either. And on top of that, the air conditioning was out. So, and I did my show there, so it was kind of like sitting in a car parked in a Walmart parking lot in August with no air conditioning on and the windows up. You know, all the things they tell you not to do to your kids.
Right.
That's kind of what I was living in most of the afternoon and evening. So that's how
my weekend. How much weight did you lose? Did you get on the scale before and after?
I know what a NASCAR driver feels like now.
Oh, good. All right.
Yeah,
so you did about 50 hot laps in the right. That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, now I know what that feels like, and I don't want any part of it again. Anyway, your weekend, I know you spent with the TCU Horned Frogs.
Yes, I did.
And I'll get to that. I want to come back to that, but I want to spend the majority of the time talking about that victory yesterday. Everybody, it's a win. You know, Cowboys beat Tampa Bay in one of the ugliest football games I've ever sat through since last weekend.
It was brutal. I don't know. I just keep coming back to the idea that this is as a direct result of, I think, two things. One, mass player movement in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Two, these practices in the offseason really aren't practices because no one's going at it the way they need to go at it in September. So I really don't think you see what the team is genuinely should look like until October. So you're seeing preseason football in regular season games.
I don't think Tony Romo is going to live past preseason then.
Yeah, I don't know what. I know the Cowboys did the right thing when they flipped Tyron Smith to the left and put Doug Free on the right. But I don't know what has happened to Doug Free. That has been one of the most unexpected, fascinating career reversals that I can recall seeing in this town in quite some time. You got to remember, Bryan, a couple of years ago, this guy was pretty good. I mean, he was a young, developing tackle who did okay on the left. Okay, not great, probably not in his best spot. It's harder, but then, and then he went to the right, and they struggled last year a little bit. They obviously had a talent upgrade in Tyron Smith, so they flipped him. And normally the right side is a much better place to play. It's an easier place to play because you're not going against quite the same caliber of end, and you can play. You don't have to be out in space quite as much, so your feet don't have to be quite as nimble as you do on the left side. And now we're seeing from Doug Free as a guy who looks like he can't play. I don't get it. I don't know if he's hurt. I'm guessing his confidence has to have been at least shaken and stirred.
Well,
because what we're seeing there now is a quick ticket to Tony Romo's death.
When you see a defensive lineman pick Doug Free up off the ground and throw him back into the quarterback, that's not a good sign.
No, and especially, you'd understand it, Bryan. I really think you'd understand it if that defensive end is Reggie White. You would. Reggie White did that to guys, and Reggie White was just a special talent who could do that. And he did it to a lot of guys. You're like, well, okay, well, that's kind of like striking out to Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan did that to a lot of guys, and Reggie White did that to a lot of guys. I can't remember if it was McCoy, who's good. I mean, the Bucs have some good young defensive ends. That should not be happening, period. I'm sorry, that's not Reggie White playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Well, he sure looked like him. I thought he'd come back from the dead yesterday.
Yeah, that's about right, because when you see a play like that, I can't think of any other guys in the NFL who did what happened to Doug Free yesterday, who picked a 300-plus pound man up,
Michael
lifted
Bennett.
him, and pushed him into the quarterback.
Yeah, Marty B's brother.
Yeah, it was Bennett. That's right, it was Bennett. I forgot.
But both of those guys were phenomenal. I'm telling you, that offensive line is about as bad as it gets in the NFL, and I don't see it getting better.
That's the crazy thing, though. If you looked at what they did against the Giants, they weren't that bad.
I don't understand it.
Neither do I. And that's like, I mean, you get back to this, one week the team is this, and the next week the team is that, and and I think it's the reason why no one should get too high after. I mean, yeah, you won the game, and that's great, and you can't apologize for a win, but to me, it's endemic to the greater problem that the Cowboys have, which is you're celebrating these wins and you're confusing them with real progress, when in fact, like that Giants game was real progress. That Seahawks thing, man, and I know they won the game and they beat, a team that really isn't that good. They've got some nice young players. Their quarterback is atrocious. Josh Freeman can't play, and now everybody's starting to see it. You got to take it and you got to be happy, but I'm telling you, there's so many red flags on this team right now. There's no way not to be concerned for the long term. You won the game, it's great, but holy cow, do you have problems.
Oh, it's nasty. And then you add on to it these guys that they call officials yesterday, and Ogletree trips over a hat that's thrown in the end zone as he's making his break and falls down. I mean, are you kidding me?
I love that.
Are you kidding
I thought
me?
that was just bad luck. I mean, of all the calls that I saw yesterday, and I know NBC must not have had the camera to do it, that field goal at the end of the Ravens-Patriots game, it looked like had that field goal, had that upright extended another 5 feet upwards, it looked to me like the ball was going to hit it. And I know they must not have had the camera to look up. A lot of times you'll have a camera angle that will look up and you can see it to give you a better idea of if the ball was flying past or around or whatever. And of all the calls, I know there were a bunch of bad ones. And you know what? In officiating, there's always bad calls every week. I think the thing that's so alarming about the way the officials are calling these games is they have no control over any of it.
No.
None. And bad calls happen all the time. Guys complain all the time. That happens all the time. That's the thing that I'm seeing the most, is that there's no control over these games. And it's fun there's an element of suspense and all that's kind of, great comedy theater, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to be called. You don't know what fight is going to break out. You watch these guys are pushing off each other and getting away with stuff they haven't for years and years and years. So that's kind of fun. So watching, the referee throw his hat and Kevin Ogletree slip on it, to me, just adds to the fun and the continued comedy of errors that is NFL officiating right now, that the league itself does not care about at all.
Well, did you see the shots that Matt Schaub took yesterday for
that
the
was
Texans?
Vicious. Yeah, that was vicious.
I mean, but they had 3 different 15-yard penalties against the Broncos on the same drive, and the kid from Texas A&M picks him up and drives him into the ground, and then on the next play, he gets that one where he loses a chunk of his ear. I mean, is Evander Holyfield now? Is Mike Tyson playing defense? I mean, are you kidding me?
But on that one, when I was watching that game and I saw those plays and specifically those penalties, do you think, though, that those to me, those are just violent, fast plays that happen, and I don't know if I could put that on officiating.
Well, I mean,
Von Miller picks the guys up and he drives them into the ground or whatever else. I don't know if officiating could really curtail that.
Maybe an ejection?
Well, that's just it, though. I mean, do you eject a guy for a violent, fast hit?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not. I think the guys are doing the best they can.
Oh, I know.
I mean, I don't blame these guys at all. I think they're all doing the best they can. The NFL just doesn't care.
It's just turned the game into a complete farce, and quarterbacks are going to get killed. And then when that happens, then maybe they'll decide, okay, we got to get this fixed. But right now, they're getting these guys killed. And, like I said, Romo, I mean, God bless him. He is not going to last another 3 weeks. I mean, they play the Bears. They play Baltimore later on. I mean, he is going to get destroyed.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's an offensive line issue. And, the reason I wrote this last week, 25 years ago or so, we watched, America paid for and watched and outdrew a pennant race to watch replacement players football.
True.
If we did that then we'll certainly pay and watch replacement officials football.
You're absolutely right. Okay, real quickly, you saw TCU beat Virginia. I saw your picture of the stadium half empty, right at kickoff?
Isn't that amazing, Brian? That was right at kickoff.
I mean, that is not a big-time college football atmosphere. I'm sorry.
Nope. And it doesn't. It's one of those deals where you build a stadium, and the stadium, Brian, I got to tell you, the stadium is great. They did an amazing job. I don't know how they did it. It was one of those where you're walking around and you're in the exact same place where this old, rusted-out, museum of cement that 2 years ago is now a modern, and not only is it modern, but it has sort of a Camden Yards feel to it, and that's not an embellishment. They just did a terrific job, and for people who are in the Tyler area kicking around coming to a game, you couldn't ask for a better fan setup.
And I hear tickets are available.
Oh yeah, and that is the problem. You're talking about a university that has an enrollment of 8,000. That's still predominantly female, and
which is a good thing on most levels.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing. But they're not, and the students went. It's not like the students didn't go, but in order to get a sellout before the season, the university, the athletic department was making season tickets available in huge numbers to the same people. So what's happening was, and it's going to be really telling when they play Oklahoma and Texas Tech or any of these other big regional schools, all these local fans bought them up. Well, they may want to use 4, but they bought 10. They're not going to use 10.
No.
So what are they going to do with the remaining 6? They're going to put them on eBay, they're going to put them on Craigslist, or they're going to put them on StubHub, and those fans are going to be not TCU fans, but OU fans. So you're going to see, in what should be, a flood of purple at kickoff, you're going to see a lot of red from Tech, from OU, to the orange and black of Oklahoma State, all those visiting teams that are within a reasonable drive. That's what's going to be in that place. And it's because it's just a small school. And I understand it. I worked there 15 years ago, and you understand it too, Brian. It's just tough. And while Fort Worth has done a nice job of getting behind TCU, and there's a lot of T-shirt fans in town now, and those are really, really important to a small school, doesn't fix the problem, which is it's just a small school. And I tell you what, it's a good team. He's a hell of a coach. They've got a really good team, and they're going to be competitive. And it was hotter than blazes out there. I was out there in the stands. It was 100. It felt like it was 100 degrees. The game was getting boring, and you're just like, I gotta go. And I don't know if you saw, Brian, any of the second half blimp shots from ESPN. I mean, it was empty, and the game was, the game had gotten boring, and it was hot. But
yeah,
they're going to be issues coming up. But right now, if you get a chance, it's a good team. I think they can beat some pretty good teams in the Big 12. But in terms of, it is not going to be a sea of purple for home games when they play OU. There's going to be a lot of red in there because those people buying those tickets are going to get rid of them.
And that's really a shame, and I'm interested to see how Gary Patterson looks at this in the long term. Because he's said no to so many job offers. I'm sure people come and talk to him in private every year about coming to their school. Arkansas is going to be open at the end of the season.
He didn't want that job.
I understand.
He's talked to Nebraska. He's talked to Washington. I think there was even years ago feelers from Tennessee, and I think the job he wanted was Texas. I think that was the job he wanted. And I got to tell you, as much as I like Gary, I don't know if Texas would have been his ideal fit.
No, you need somebody that really knows how to press the flesh there, and that's one of the reasons that Makovic never was a good fit, because he just was not a friendly guy, and you need somebody that can really politic, and Mac does a great job,
One of the best in the country, and Gary's gotten really good at it.
Yeah.
And he's in a place right now, if he wins 8, 9, 10 games a year, Brian, he can make $2.5, $3 million a year. He's building a 9,000 square foot house. He and his wife can run the town. They can do whatever they want. It's a good setup, and it's like we're seeing it with a lot of these different coaches. These guys, because of the amount of money they make, they don't need to coach forever.
Yeah.
They just don't. So with like Gary's situation, why would he leave? I don't think and because they're in the Big 12 now, because this university has done everything it can to pimp itself out and really grow and be attractive to any number of students, both locally and nationally. It's a decent job. It's a hard job because it's a Big 12 job.
Sure.
But it's still a decent job. But it doesn't change the fact when it comes to getting people in those seats, it's tough. It's still hard.
Well, I hope he finds a way to figure it out and get those fans in there, because that football team deserves better support than it got this weekend. That's for sure. So
yeah, and I agree. And you know what? I was thinking about it. And Bryan, you've been to and I remember I was sitting there watching that game, and when we left at halftime, and I'm like, I know a lot of people in Austin do this. I know it happens, and it happens everywhere.
Oh, sure.
The tailgating scene has gotten just outrageously attractive, but. When the thing that's going to bum me out is when they play, and not so much for me, but just for TCU people in general, when they play those games against, like when UT plays Oklahoma State, there's a tiny little section of Oklahoma State fans in the corner of the end zone, and that's it. When TCU plays Oklahoma, there's going to be a lot of red and white in prime seats for that game.
That's a shame. Mac, appreciate your time, man. Thanks very much for coming on today. We appreciate it. Tell people about how they can see the DFWOT again.
Okay, real quick. It's exclusively for the iPad. If you're an iPad owner, go to the iTunes store and log on and get DFWOT. It is an e-magazine produced by the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, dedicated to all local sports, regional sports, Big 12, high schools, and certainly professional stuff, Cowboys, Stars, Rangers, and the Mavericks. Mavs obviously start here training camp this week, I believe. DFWOT, it's $1.99 a month, and we got a new issue coming out here in a couple weeks.
Peachy, all right, man. Thanks very much. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next Monday.
Okay, thanks, Bryan.
All right, it's Mac Engel from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.